Hello everyone. We're going to work on some more triangle proofs, and the first one involves these two triangles right here. We are to prove that the triangles are congruent. I forgot to write that down, but I do remember triangle WRL is congruent to triangle EDL. Alright, now what is given to us? First of all, L is the midpoint of WE. So let's take a look at here. What can we do with that? Well, I think we can use the midpoint definition and say that WL and EL are congruent. What else can we do? It says WR and ED are congruent. Not congruent, it says parallel right there. Well, when you have parallel lines like these two are, do you remember that the transversals here, that the alternate interior angles are also congruent? And this is also a transversal between these two parallel lines, so these two angles are congruent. And if we need, we could use these vertical angles right here being congruent. So I see plenty of opportunities here, and I think what I'll focus on is these two angles being congruent, these two sides being congruent, and these two angles being congruent. Alright, well, let's build the proof now that we have a game plan in mind. And the first statement, let's go for the angles, and let's deal with the fact that we use the parallel lines, that WR is parallel to ED, and that was given to us. And then the second statement off of that is we have angle W is congruent to angle E. There's no mistaking this. These are the only two W's and E's, so I don't have to write all three letters to get those angles. And alternate interior angles are congruent if two lines are cut by a transversal. Two parallel lines cut by a transversal. Now, so we have our angle. Let's go for the side here. Remember, let's get this given in here. L is the midpoint of WE. I ran those two words together. If L is the midpoint of segment WE, then segment WL is congruent to segment EL. And remember, off of that, we concluded that segment WL is congruent to segment EL, and I really got ahead of myself here. I should have just written given here. Sorry about that. And this is where that belonged, that statement. WL is congruent to EL, and that is reason, the definition of midpoint. Because L is the midpoint of WE, we have those two congruent. Alright, so we have two angles and two sides that are congruent. And then I wanted to go for the angles. Now, this time I'm going to use all three letters. Angle RLW tells me it's angle L in this triangle is congruent to angle DLE. Because vertical angles are always congruent. Vertical angles are congruent. So there is another angle. It is angle side angle. Angle, side, angle. Those are the ones I've used in here. And that is a postulate we wrote down in class that we can use for triangle proofs. So triangle WRL is congruent to triangle EDL. And we are finished with this proof. And the reason is the angle, side, angle postulate. The next proof I have right here. Let's look at what we're given and then have a game plan and what we need to prove. Angle NKL. This angle right here is congruent to angle NJM. NKL is congruent to angle NJM. KL. K to L is the same length as J to M. Those two lengths are congruent. Now, in this triangle, if you'll look, what's being asked is we need to prove LN and MN are congruent. They're not asking us to prove a triangle is congruent, but that's where we're going to have to go first. This is a special case. We're going to be using CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So, to do that, we will this case, angle N is in both triangles. So I think we can go angle, angle, side, angle, angle, side, and get the triangles congruent. After that, we can go after the sides. So that's the game plan. Now this is adding a level to the proofs that we've done. We're going past the fact that the triangles are congruent and that we have parts are congruent. So, statement 1, let's just write down angle NKL is congruent to angle NJM. And the reason that is so is because they told us it was. So we write given. Number 2, segment KL is congruent to segment JM, and we've marked those. Two sides is congruent. That was given to us. Number 3, let's deal with this angle here. It is angle JNM is congruent to angle KNM, and that is the reflexive property. Now, we've written it differently, but those two are describing the same angle. They're describing this angle right here. So that is the reflexive property. JNM is this opening right here. KNL is that opening right there. KNL, not M. KNL. Okay? And I have an angle. This is a side and this is angle. Now it's not angle, side, angle because this side is not between the two congruent angles. It's not that side we're talking about. So we are going to still call triangle JNM congruent to triangle KNL because of the angle side postulate. So that means everything from each triangle is congruent. That means that these two sides are congruent. That means these two angles are congruent. And that also means that this side from the bottom of this triangle is congruent to this side, which is the bottom of that triangle, which is what we were supposed to prove. LN, segment LN, is congruent to segment MN. And with that being said, we write the reason. CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. This is a case where you prove the triangles are congruent first, and then you take the parts that are in the triangle that correspond and finish your proof. All right. I'll talk to you about this tomorrow.